Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different in this video and talking about a travel experience. Now this stands out as sort of one of my favourite travel experiences in the last few years and actually maybe in my whole life. We're going to be talking about Newfoundland and Labrador in Canada and specifically about hunting icebergs. It was a unique and amazing experience, especially as a photographer, and something I'd always wanted to do. So today I want to show you some of my favourite photos. We're going to show you some behind the scenes video. I'm just going to talk a bit about my experience with some hints and tips in case you want to go. So Newfoundland and Labrador is the easternmost state of Canada. It's relatively unknown, I would say, as a place in Northern America, yet it is unique and incredibly beautiful and has so much going for it, which is why I wanted to make this video to talk about it. It's situated on the Atlantic Ocean. Let's have a look at a map and let's have a look at exactly where you can see. So Newfoundland is the island and Labrador is the mainland part of the state. It's got a very small population, only about 500,000, which is very small for the landmass area, but I think the people are one of its strengths. I think in general Canada has a very friendly and hospitable nature. People are very happy-go-lucky, but the people from Newfoundland and Labrador very much encapsulate the essence of that personality. They're incredibly friendly and hospitable. It feels very homely as a place to go on holiday. I felt instantly like I fit in. They have very unusual and endearing accent.
It was probably 3 weeks ago, and there was a humpback when it came. It was high tide. The humpback when it came right there, and he was so close that if it would have went the right way, he probably would have landed on the fishing ship.
Now I'd mainly like to talk about my kind of hunting icebergs there, but I'm going to show you through some of the other places I went, some of my favourite spots to photograph. But I would say that Newfoundland and Labrador is one of the best and most accessible places in the world to go and to see and explore icebergs. I would say the whole state is a bit of a hidden gem, to be honest. I mean, for someone that is very interested in landscapes, and I've travelled my whole life, I didn't really know much about it before I went. So a lot of these icebergs float down. Let me show you a bit of a kind of infographic so you can see, but these icebergs float down from Greenland. They float along the Canadian coast, down Labrador, and then they kind of float around the north and the west coast of Newfoundland as well. These things are 10,000 years old. I mean, these are the same icebergs that sunk the Titanic 100 years ago. In fact, it wasn't far off the coast that the Titanic was sunk. Before I went out there, I did some research and saw some recent ones that have been washed up. Obviously, you've got to be lucky to see some of the bigger ones, but here's a couple of pictures just from Google and from news channels of some of the more impressive ones that have been around in the last couple of years. I didn't see any quite that big, but I still saw some pretty impressive ones. So when is good to go? I mean, anytime from April to July you can see the icebergs, and even outside of that sometimes, but sort of late May, early June is the peak when you get the most of the icebergs and the most impressive ones. As I said, they drift down the west coast and the north coast of Newfoundland Island, so you don't get so many along the south, so you're better off sort of the more northern you go, the more chance you have of seeing them. In terms of camera gear, a lot of people have asked me about how to photograph them. I mean, if you're photographing them from the land, even if it's a big one, you're going to want quite a large zoom. I would suggest at least 200 millimeters because they are often a long way out to sea. You can be lucky, they can come very close into the land and you can catch them on a sort of normal angle lens, but I recommend bringing more of a telephoto out there if you want to catch them from the land. But by far and away the best way to see them is to get on a boat. I mean, there's so many places, do boat trips and kayak trips, get up close to them because that's where you get the most interesting shots and the most impressive experiences. My favourite time, as with any landscape type photography, is to photograph them at golden hour, so we're talking sunrise and sunset. It's not always the easiest to go out then, but you certainly can do trips out on boats then, but they're impressive to photograph all day, and as you'll see when I start to show you some more photos coming up now, a lot of the time I saw them, they were in a kind of hazy, misty environment, which for me made it even more interesting and atmospheric, but they look beautiful in the sun as well, obviously, with the light reflecting off them. So let's get stuck in. I'm going to lead you through some of my photographs so you can see some of my favourite ones from the trip. Okay, so let's have a look through some of these photos and I'll show you some of my favourite places. So I actually flew in on the west coast to Deer Lake, and from there I headed up to Grouse Moor National Park. Now, I really highly recommend exploring Grouse Moor National Park if you head to Newfoundland and Labrador. It's one of the most scenic places. It's quite reminiscent of Norway to me, which is another one of my favourite countries. Some giant fjords, beautiful lakes, very quaint villages like this one. This is Norris Point, like really nice place to just kick back and relax, do some exploring with your camera in hand. Make sure you get out at sunset and even at night time. It's just such a peaceful place. As you can see, the roads around here are just really quiet and beautiful. Like everything here is basically photographic. So it's a bit of a dream as a photographer. This one is from the Tablelands, which is I think it's part of Grossmoor National Park, but it's just to the south anyway, and it's a bit more stark there, kind of rocky, snowy, some interesting rivers, some great things to take photos of. As you head up north through Grossmoor, you've got one of the most sort of famous areas. It's called Western Brook Pond, which is a giant fjord. It's not the most accessible on your own. You have to take a boat trip. You can do some hiking if you're there at the right time of year, which is sort of coming up later in the summer because there's too much snow early on, but you can actually get dropped off by the boat at the other side of the fjord and do some day hikes or even overnight hikes to some absolutely incredible views down onto the fjord, which unfortunately I couldn't do because I was there a bit early in the season. You can see from this photo here there was still quite a lot of snow, so it was too dangerous to and inaccessible to hike there at the time. So as I started to head up north along the west coast, I started to see a few icebergs, but generally quite a long way out. This one was quite a big one. It was the first kind of proper big one I saw. I was trying to get some compositions with houses a bit like the ones you saw in the news earlier because it really helps to show the scale of them, but it's tricky to capture. This was probably one of the best ones I got of there. Here's a few shots of sort of quaint, like little holiday homes on lakes that I just found really kind of quaint and cute and great to photograph. The next bit I want to talk about is a real kind of standout part of my trip, which was Carpoon Island. So Carpoon Island was one of my favourite spots. It's such a unique place to go. It's really off the grid. It's a very rugged and rustic island with no roads, no Wi-Fi, not even any phone signal or reception. It is simply a lighthouse with a couple of guest houses. There's only 10 rooms in total. So there's not many guests. Everyone eats together in the same lounge. The staff are incredibly friendly and hospitable. You kind of feel like you're with one big new family, and I felt very at home the whole time I was there. I spent a lot of the time out on a Zodiac boat out to explore the icebergs, but there's some amazing hiking to do around there. You can explore, there's wildlife. If you're there at the right time, sort of the end of July, coming into August, you can also go whale watching, and I've been told you can see hundreds of whales just in one day. We saw a couple when we were out on the boat, but we were there a bit early in the season. As you can see as well, it's one of the best places to see icebergs. I mean, we saw tons of absolutely gigantic icebergs. So I was out on the Zodiac in the boat exploring every day, trying to get out there around sunrise and sunset, whenever I could really. As you can see, there's one giant iceberg just outside. It was kind of beached up in the bay there, right outside, which was perfect. As soon as I walked out of my door in the morning, I could see this huge iceberg in front of me, so there were plenty of opportunities to photograph it. And it was misty the most of the time I'm there, which just created this really cool atmosphere. Like here's some shots from night time of the lighthouse. Again, I just wanted to touch on how awesome the people are there and how important they are to the experience. So on Carpoon, you've got this photo on the right, that's Ed, the owner, and then the staff and all the other people that go on holiday there. Everyone's so friendly because that is part of what the experience is about. This one's just outside the front of my guest house late at night, and I was heading up for dinner, and here's some sort of photos and footage out on the boat where you can see us exploring the icebergs. You go around it, but there was plenty of sun too. I just didn't have sun when I was on Carpoon Island, but there's a lot of beautiful spots all along the north coast that I would love to have spent more time in, but as I only had a week there, this is some of the places I explored, and you can see how much I managed to take in within just 1 week. There really is so much to see there. So I hope you've enjoyed seeing some photos and behind the scenes video from my trip to Newfoundland and Labrador. As I said, it's such a hidden gem. I really would recommend going there in the near future before it starts to take off and become the next tourist hotspot, which for me I have no doubt in my mind that it will, because it's such an amazing place. If you've got any questions about the trip or about places to see them or about how to photograph them, then please do comment below or send me a DM. I'll be happy to help out. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I'll see you next week for the next video.